Hello. Well, I didn't actually intend to do this, and I haven't done any prior research apart from this Wikipedia article about Ozymandias, but a couple of people have asked me to go through it. I don't expect this to have a very high hit rate, but I thought I might as well anyway. Ozymandias, it says here, is the title of two related sonnets published in 1818. The famous one is the one by Shelley, and apparently it's been quoted by a lot of TV shows and things like that, which I didn't know. And what happened was that people said, "Oh, I recognise the quote. I never knew where it was from." So, hang on a minute. So that was. I found that quite shocking. I thought everyone knew where Ozymandias, well, nearly everyone knew where Ozymandias came from. All right, so Shelley wrote the poem in a friendly competition with his friend and fellow poet Horace Smith, who also wrote a sonnet on the same topic with the same title. Smith's poem was published in the Examiner 3 weeks after Shelley's on February the 1st, 1818. Both poems explore the fate of history and the ravages of time. Even the greatest men and the empires they forge are impermanent, their legacies fated to decay into oblivion. Oh, right. Now, this was inspired by a large fragment of a statue of Ramses II from the 13th century BCE. Some scholars believe Shelley was inspired by the acquisition. All right. No, so Horace Smith was a banker and a political writer. I didn't know that. The banker and political writer Horace Smith spent the Christmas season of 1817 with Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley. At this time, members of Shelley's literary circle would sometimes challenge each other to write competing sonnets on a common subject. So this is perfectly reasonable. No television at the time, people played games, and because these guys were literary types, they went to writing poetry. As a matter of fact, sometimes family dinners, we would make up limericks around the table. Okay, so it describes a massive Egyptian statue and quoted its inscription, "King of kings, Ozymandias am I. If any want to know how great I am and where I lie, let him outdo me in my work." That's what the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus said. All right, these are the two poems. They are sonnets, which means usually 14 lines, unless you're Gerard Manley Hopkins, in which they're 11 lines, but that's another matter. Now, I haven't looked at any other critiques of this poem. I'm just going to tell you what I find between the two. And right off, I want to say that I think Shelley's is much superior to Smith's, and for one particular reason. Not to do, although Smith uses, I don't know whether he just thinks he's being funny, but his imagery is a little weird and clumsy. In my opinion, this is all my opinion. I mean, everyone can have their own opinion about these poems. So I'll read Shelley's. I read it once in another video, but I'll read it again, and I'll read Smith's, and then I'll just go through why I think Smith's is so inferior. All right, so Shelley's goes like this. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear: my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. That was Shelley. And I did say I had trouble with this line, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. Somebody actually suggested a way of interpreting this, and he said that, or she said, I don't remember who it was, the hand that mocked them, of course, is obviously the sculptor. Mocked in this case at that time meant copied. And the heart that fed could probably mean the heart of Ozymandias that fed the look on his face. It makes good sense. Yeah. So tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the stone out of which it's carved. The passions, the sculptor read the passions, and they remain there on the stone, given by the hand that actually did the sculpting and the heart that gave the expression. That's reasonable enough. Okay. Horace Smith's Ozymandias goes as follows. I don't know that by heart, so I'll have to just read it off the page. In Egypt's sandy silence, all alone, stands a gigantic leg, which far off throws the only shadow that the desert knows. I am great Ozymandias, saith the stone, the King of Kings. This mighty city shows the wonders of my hand. The city's gone. Naught but the leg remains to disclose the site of this forgotten Babylon. We wonder. That is, we look on this in wonder. We wonder. And some hunter may express wonder like ours when, through the wilderness where London stood, holding the wolf in chase, he meets some fragment huge and stops to guess what powerful but unrecorded race once dwelt in that annihilated place. All right. It's reasonable enough. It gives the same message. Here's the wreck of a great statue which was in the middle of a great city. The city has completely disappeared. There's only a leg, or in Shelley's case, 2 legs. There's just the lower half of a statue remains, and that's it. And we look on that and we wonder what these people were like and what great things they did. And we wonder at that single leg there, just standing in the desert, actually big enough to throw a shade on a very flat and empty, otherwise empty landscape. We wonder about it, and maybe at some future date, some person, hunter chasing a wolf might come across the remains of Big Ben or whatever, and wonder at that, and wonder who those people were who built this, what's left of what was obviously a huge monumental building. But that's the point, you see. at no point does Shelley say that we will think this or we think that. He doesn't say that at all. We do think this. But Shelley doesn't tell us what to think. Smith does. Now, going through the technical bits of the poem, in Egypt's sandy silence all alone. So he's using that s sound to sort of imitate maybe the whistling of the wind or the sifting of the sand. Gerard Manley Hopkins talks about an hourglass, and he says, I am soft sift in an hourglass. You know, his life is just running through the glass. That was good. This is not good. In Egypt's sandy silence, it's already, I don't know what, hackneyed. I suppose there'll be more technical views of it, but we're already being told Egypt is sandy and silent. I mean, it's not silent in many places, but here in the desert it is. So we're being told what to think. Just think sand, think silence. That's bad poetry. It's bad anything, really. It reminds me of, in many cases, you know those cheap mystery plays you get in theatre, and what happens? The curtain goes up and there's a drawing room, and there's a telephone, and the telephone rings, and in walks some maid, and she probably doesn't have any other lines in the whole play, and she walks in, she runs to the phone, picks it up and says, hello, this is Parson Smith's residence. No, Mr. Parson, the Reverend Smith and his wife are off with their daughter on a trip to Scotland. No, we're going to have some visitors here this afternoon, but they're just renting the place from the Smiths. Yes, I'm getting the place ready. I'll leave them a message. Thank you very much. He puts it down, and that's supposed to set the scene. That is the cheapest, most hackneyed bit of playwriting you could do. And speaking as an ex-radio writer, I know all about those tricks. But of course, it's not good quality. You have to be able to infer. You don't just come out with it like that. And this one, in Egypt's sandy silence, that's what that reminds me of. The maid at the beginning of the French farce you have with people running in and there's nothing wrong with running in and out of French windows. It's very amusing, but it can be written well. It can be written in a very crass and obvious way. Okay. I'm not saying this is as crass and obvious as that, by the way. Okay, in Egypt's sandy silence, all alone stands a gigantic leg. Okay, now that is ridiculous to start with. I don't know whether Smith thought, oh yeah, I'll make this guy ridiculous, but it's a terrible image. There's just this big leg in the middle. Anyone seen Monty Python? You know that leg that comes down and stamps on people well, it's that sort of thing. If you haven't seen Monty Python, Terry Gilliam did a lot of the graphics, and one of them was like a Victorian illustration of a leg, which would come down onto a character, you know, a gigantic leg, and it would come down and squash a character every so often, just for the hell of it. Okay, so there's this gigantic leg in the middle of Egypt's sandy silence, and it throws a shadow. That's all right, and it's not a bad one because it's an image of time. It's like like a sundial, isn't it? There's this leg, and it's throwing a shadow which will move along the sand according to the time of day, but of course it's recording the passage of time as well. So obviously Smith would have been thinking of that when he came up with this image. And then he blows the whole thing by bringing Ozymandias in before he's hardly set the scene. I am great Ozymandias, saith the stone. Well, the stone doesn't say anything, or even saith anything. It's on the stone, yes, for sure, but he's got the stone speaking. Again, it's this slightly ridiculous image of something coming to life in a cartoonish sort of way. Okay, I'm great Ozymandias, saith the stone, the king of kings. Fine. This mighty city shows the wonders of my hand. Yeah, okay, the city's gone. All right, that's fine, except again, it's telling you what to think. He's already said Egypt's sandy silence, and he's already said that there's no other shadow on the desert but that leg. So obviously there's no city there. He didn't need to say the city's gone. What he's doing is he's punching it into your brain. Naught but the leg remain. Yeah, okay, we know, you've already said that, yes? Naught but the leg remaining to disclose the site of this forgotten Babylon. Okay, so he's rhyming gone and Babylon. It's a little bit doggerelly, you know, the sort of thing you get on cards, birthday cards. I'm trying to think of something. I'm just trying to drag something out of my memory. No, gone. All right. We wonder. Yeah. And he's telling us we are standing there looking at this giant sound, this giant timepiece, this leg in the middle of the desert. And we're wondering. He's telling us we're wondering. We don't need to be told we're wondering. I'll go back to Shelley in a minute. And some hunter may express wonder like ours. You see, and all he had to do was say that a hunter may express wonder like ours. At that point, that's a reasonable thing to say. He didn't need to tell us to wonder before he started. You see? Okay. And some hunter may express wonder like ours when, through the wilderness where London stood, holding the wolf in chase, a chase in this case, meaning the hunt. This is the word and the spelling, the old spelling for hunt. I don't know whether it was actually current at the time Smith used it or whether it was a deliberately old-fashioned one. But the fact is there weren't any wolves in Britain. So what he's talking about here is the fact that Britain has gone back to some sort of primitive wilderness. And so, at that point, he's starting to approach Shelley's ability to infer rather than just to tell us. But it's a bit late for that now, and too little, too late. Holding the wolf in chase, he meets some fragment huge and stops to guess. Now, I had a teacher once who said, when you reverse the language, that's illegitimate, that's cheating. And so I've always had a bit of a prejudice against reversing things. I know why he did it, because fragment huge fits the meter more, but he could have thought of something else. He just didn't want to, didn't have time, or couldn't be bothered. Or maybe he thought it sounded more archaic, but it doesn't seem right here. Especially as he's talking now about a savage, and a savage chasing a wolf would not be thinking about a fragment huge. He'd be thinking about that bloody stone he just stubbed his toe on. Okay, he meets some fragment huge and stops to guess what powerful but unrecorded race once dwelt in that annihilated place. This is, by the way, his rhyming scheme. Alone, throws, knows, and then stone. And then shows, gone, which is gone, it's to match with that. And shows and throws, and then disclose, and then Babylon to rhyme with gone there. And here we have AB, AB, and then chase and race here, and guess and wilderness and express there, and that is place, which rhymes with chase. It's a pretty standard, this 2-line ending that rhyme is a pretty standard sonnet ending. You have these 2 lines. Let's see, at the end of a Shakespeare sonnet, hang on, it's Shakespeare's sonnet about "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Now, I was just going to say that ends with 2 rhyming. As long as men have breath and eyes to see, so liveth this, and this gives life to thee. So there's those 2 things at the end. There are 14 lines, and the 2 lines at the end should rhyme. Shelley doesn't do that. He hasn't done this standard form, although he has stuck to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 lines. And this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 lines. But he's done it just like a poem, you know, a longer poem, but just 14 lines of it. Now, let's look at how Shelley did it. I met a traveller from an antique land, just an old place, who said, "2 vast and trunkless legs of stone." Now, immediately what he's saying is we've got this huge thing, vast, and trunkless. So you're not concentrating on the legs, you're concentrating on the fact that once upon a time there was a body there. And so the ridiculousness of just empty legs in the middle of the desert, out of nowhere, that's immediately the joke that it could be has been drawn already, because you're concentrating on that trunkless legs, and you're thinking, what's that mean? Well, it means that there's no body there, and immediately you start thinking of the body, you see. So the silliness of a leg out of nowhere has gone. Stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip, and by the way, he breaks up the rhyme a lot more than Smith does. If you see this alone and stone and throws and knows, you know, it's very much rhyming. You stop there. Like this: stands a gigantic leg which far off throws the only shadow that the desert knows. That's where the accent will come. In Shelley, it doesn't happen like that. A traveller from an antique land who said, "2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert." So that stand rhymes with the land up there, really, but it takes the rhyme into the next line. And so it means it's a more natural, you can say this poem with far more, like a narrative, whereas with this you're forced into a rhythm. Stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. Now, I'm saying command because that was supposed to rhyme with sound. Nowadays we say command. Shelley probably did pronounce it command. Tell that its sculptor well, and you see again he's got these rhymes here. So you're putting the emphasis halfway through the line. Tell that its sculptor well those passions red which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, the sculptor, and the heart that fed. The Ozymandias, his heart that fed that expression. I think that's brilliant. If you're watching this, whoever told me about it, it's just marvellous. And then you see, after this whole scene, then he talks about what's on the pedestal. The stones aren't saying anything. The words just appear on the stone. And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. And that's one of the best lines ever, because you see, it's got a double meaning, which all good poetry should have. Or all good poetry does anyway. You see, because what he says here, Ozymandias is saying, look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. That is, you'll never be as great as me. Look at this great city and the pyramids and the monuments and the hanging gardens and whatever Ozymandias had built there. So that's what Ozymandias is saying. But when we're looking at it, we, the people who have conquered this, and we see what happened to Ozymandias and his great works, we despair, because we see in him, in what he did and to what he has degenerated, that's us, or that will be us. But Shelley hasn't told us to think that. It's just there, and we see it, we work it in our minds. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. And then the poem ends, and it's just the last 3 lines we get that's the end of the sonnet, not the last 2, which is what we would have expected. And this here, bear, rhymes with despair, and decay rhymes with away. It's completely out of the style of a sonnet, really. I suppose there will be others who have done that, but Shelley chose this specifically for this subject because I think of those 3 lines. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. And that ends it. And then you get the word nothing. Nothing beside remains. Oh, by the way, I just want to say, we've got these 2 legs, and then he has a face sunk in the sand. There's nothing here in Smith's of the person Ozymandias, just this leg. But Shelley included a face, a broken face, a shattered representation of this great king. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing, back to that word, nothing beside remains. And we have to remember that the word remains refers to a corpse as well. It's just, he could have said, is there, was there, lays there, something like that. But he used the word remains because that will bring up an image in our mind. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck. And here again, we're not stopping at decay. We're going into the next line very smoothly. Round the decay of that colossal wreck. Split the line. Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Now here we have this SS again. But here it's a distance isn't it? And you know this word lone, that's cheating. What do you mean lone? Means nothing. It could be lonely. It means he means deserted, but even at that time, the word lone didn't mean deserted. He used it because of the two L's and then these two S's. So it gives you a sort of a feeling, a sense of whistling wind, you know, and flatness. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Goodness me. According to this, I've been doing this for nearly 30 minutes. Okay, I think there might be a problem with the recording. There sometimes is at this length of time. So I'll stop it there. And that's my interpretation of Ozymandias by Percy Shelley and Horace Smith, and what I think of those two poems. If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on BitChute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on BitChute or Minds, good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons because occasionally they reset. Till next time.